Alright, for this video I wanted to go over capital loss carryovers in TurboTax. So capital loss carryovers, very important to track these from year to year because this is frankly one of the most common things I see get missed when taxpayers prepare their own returns, or even paid preparers miss this quite frequently. So in this example here, what we're going to have is John is working on his 2022 tax return, but he has capital loss carryovers from the prior years. And so we're going to go ahead and enter those into TurboTax so John, doesn't miss out on them, right? We want to be able to roll forward those capital loss carryovers so we can offset income in future tax years. So just continuing with the example we've been working with so far, we have John Q. Taxpayer here. He's a sales agent, lives and works full-time in Florida, and that's his full-time job. And then during the 2022 tax year, he bought and sold some stocks, some crypto. So we went ahead and we filled out all the 8949 Schedule D, but now he's missing the capital loss carryover piece, right? And part of the reason why he's missing this is John did not prepare his own return in 2021, right? So he has a copy of the 2021 tax return that a paid preparer did, but he did not do his own return in the prior year. And the reason why I highlight that is because if you use this tax prep software like TurboTax or something else, very often what you can do is if we use the same software from year to year, the software will ask to automatically import and roll forward this information. And so that's why, and that's a very convenient thing with using the tax prep software, and if you use it consistently year to year. But again, in this case, because he didn't do his own return, this is his first time using TurboTax, he's not going to have access to be able to roll forward this information. He's got to input it manually, all right? Now, the capital loss carryovers, some of the basics here that's really important to remember. When you have an overall net loss of capital losses, that is short-term and long-term, you can only use $3,000 per year to offset your ordinary income. The rest is carried forward. This is why the the capital loss carryover is so important, because very often taxpayers will have capital losses in excess of this $3,000 amount. So that's why there's always the roll forward piece. Okay. All right. So let's go look at the return itself. What we want to look at is John's tax return from 2021, and then we're going to look at TurboTax for 2022 and see how all that data is going to be inputted. So the first thing we want to look at is the TurboTax return as it stands right now. So if we're in TurboTax and we do a print preview here, so if we go down to Tax Tools, Print Center, I want to pull up the Schedule D to show you the line items that are missing. 2022 federal, go ahead and view and print the forms. And let me zoom in here a little bit so we can see it easier. So I'm going to go ahead and quickly scroll down to Schedule D. Okay, so here's Schedule D. So what we've entered so far are short-term capital gain loss amounts and the long-term capital gain or loss amounts. So the line items here are for the current period. What you'll notice that's missing are line 6, right? Short-term capital loss carryover, right? These are the capital loss carryovers from the prior year, so it's blank, right? Because we haven't rolled forward anything because that wasn't possible, nor have we manually entered anything yet. The same goes for the long-term piece, right? So the long-term capital loss carryover here on line 14, currently blank, right? So that's what we need to update. Now, if we go to John's 2021 return, I'll show you the relevant pieces that we need to be mindful of. So we have his 2021 tax return in front of us. If we scroll down to Schedule D here, so here are his capital gain or loss transactions from last year. So last year he had $82 in short-term capital loss, and he had an existing $5,100 carryover from 2020 and prior. So his overall net loss was $5,182. And then down here we have some long-term capital gains for the year at $1,250. And then he had a $2,030 long-term capital loss carryover from the prior period. Now when we look at the combination of these two, $5,182 plus $780, That's his aggregate capital loss for the year, right? So 5,962. But remember, you're only allowed to deduct up to $3,000 in capital losses against your ordinary income. So that's what part 3 is working on here is, okay, this is our aggregate result. We had $3,000 in capital losses that were able to be utilized in the current year. And then the excess is the capital loss carryover that needs to be rolled forward to 2022. And so most tax returns prepared with software will provide you a worksheet. So if we scroll down to this page, see capital loss carryover worksheet to 2022. So what this worksheet has done for us is it has illustrated what was the capital loss for the period, what amount was used, right, to offset ordinary income, and what are the carryover amounts. The relevant carryover amounts are down here on lines 8 and 13. So of the 5182, we used 3,000, all of which was the short-term piece, right? That part gets exhausted first. And we have 2,182 of short-term capital loss carryover to 2022. And then we have a long-term capital loss carryover of $780. These are the two pieces that need to be carried over to the 2022 tax return. So that's where we're going to be inputting into TurboTax. So if we go back to TurboTax, we'll close out of this screen here. Let me go back to, so the relevant piece that we need to be working with is the wages and income screen. And if we scroll down to the, where are the investments and savings section, we can see here that we've already gone through some of these, right? We've gone through 1099 INT, div, stocks. This last item is what's important for us, capital loss carryover. So I'm going to open up this screen and I'm going to fill out all the questions that it's asked. Now, you might get a pop-up that looks like this, where it'll show zeros and just go ahead and edit it. Or you might get just a simple Q&A where it'll walk through a variety of questions and just input the information as requested, and it should tell you what the capital loss items are. So what's nice about TurboTax is they're going to actually ask for a little more information and kind of recalculate what our capital loss carryover is going to be. Now we know what the amount should be, so we can kind of use it as a check figure. So it's going to ask us first to enter, looking at our 2021 tax return, what is our taxable income on line 15 of the Form 1040. So if I go back to our tax return, the capital loss worksheet has it for us, right? So the worksheet 148774, but if you want to see where it's pulled originally, you can go to page 1 of the return and taxable income on line 15. That's what it's referencing. So $148,774 is our taxable income. So 148,774. Then it's asking us on Schedule D, line 7, what is the short-term capital gain or loss? So Schedule D, line 7. So if I scroll down to Schedule D, right, so here's Schedule D, capital gains and losses. Line 7 is negative 5182. So that's the loss amount, minus 5182. So I'm going to go ahead and enter that. Then it's asking us for line 15, net long-term capital gain or loss. Scroll down to line 15 here, negative 780, so a loss of $780. And then lastly, it's asking us, so in part 3 of Schedule D, line 21, what was the allowable loss, right? So if I go to Schedule D, part 3, line 21, allowable loss was $3,000. So I'm going to go back here, enter the allowable loss as $3,000, go ahead and continue. Our carryover AMT amounts different? In our case, no. It's good to double check your return, right? It's rare, but in some cases when you're selling certain types of assets, you might have AMT variances. There should be a separate schedule. So for example, in this return, if you might have a capital loss carryover worksheet or a Schedule D worksheet that has one for regular federal income tax and then one that has the AMT amounts. In our case, we don't have any variances, so we're going to leave them all the same. Then it's asking us for what is our AMT income. So this is on 6251, line 4. So go back to the return, 6251, and we take a look at line 4 here is $161,315. So I'm going to do 161,315. Is that right? 161, $315. Okay, that's good. Then I'm going to go ahead and click through continue. Now it's giving us, here is our capital loss carryover for 2021. So $2,962. So it doesn't break this out for us right here, but if we look at the return again, if we go back to the capital loss worksheet, remember our total capital loss carryover is the 2,182 of short term plus 780 of long term. So there's the total, right? So 2,962, that's what we're seeing here in TurboTax, 2,962, right? Now, go ahead and continue. And we want to have a look at Schedule D now and make sure that everything's been updated correctly and that the capital loss carryover amounts are in the appropriate section, right? We want to make sure that TurboTax did us right here, and the short-term and long-term is exactly where it needs to be. So if I go back into the return, zoom in here, I'm going to scroll down to Schedule D. And we have capital gains or losses. Then we look at line 6. Yep, there it is, right? There's our short-term capital loss carryover amount, 2,182. So it's updating the total for the year. And then on line 14, there's our $780, right? So now the total net long-term capital gain loss has been updated accordingly as well. All right, so that's everything I wanted to cover in this video. Again, remember very, very important to double check these things when you switch tax software or you switch preparers. Just make sure all these carryover amounts are entered appropriately, and then you should be good to go for this year and all those subsequent tax years. All right, so that covers it. Thanks for watching. I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions, leave me a comment below, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video. Thank you.